This is completely unacceptable. You expect a tip for this service?
When a billionaire CEO walked into this restaurant, he thought he owned the world. Then he met a waitress who would destroy his entire empire with one conversation. What he didn't know would cost him everything. This is the story of Marcus Wellington III, a man who thought his $2.8 billion made him untouchable. He was dead wrong, and what happened next will shake you to your core. Picture this: the Grand Metropolitan, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant where a single meal costs more than most people's monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers casting golden light over tables where billion-dollar deals get sealed between courses. This wasn't just any Tuesday night. This was the night that would change everything for everyone involved. Marcus Wellington III swept through those mahogany doors like a king entering his palace. Hell, for all we know, maybe he did. Worth an estimated $2.8 billion from his tech empire, Wellington Industries, this man hadn't heard the word no in decades. His Armani suit could buy a BMW, his Rolex could purchase a small house. But here's what money can't buy: decency, respect, or basic human compassion. The waitress, all smiles and courtesy, guided him to his usual table, the corner booth with the perfect view of the city skyline. But Marcus barely acknowledged her existence. His phone was glued to his ear, barking orders at some poor employee about quarterly projections and market dominance. The kind of conversation that makes you wonder how people like this sleep at night. Enter Keisha Williams, a 23-year-old college student working her way through law school. Night shifts at the Grand Metropolitan helped pay for her books, her tiny studio apartment in Queens, and the dream of becoming a civil rights attorney. She'd been working there for 8 months, and everyone, from the kitchen staff to the manager, respected her work ethic. Keisha had this incredible ability to remain gracious under pressure, even when dealing with the city's most entitled clientele. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. As Keisha approached Marcus's table, notepad in hand and professional smile intact, she had no idea she was walking into a moment that would expose the ugly truth about power, privilege, and the price of prejudice in modern America. The dining room hummed with whispered power plays, the delicate symphony of expensive silverware against fine china, the soft jazz playing in the background, all of it about to be obliterated by what happened next. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Grand Metropolitan. Can I start you off with our wine selection tonight?" Keisha's voice was warm, professional, the kind of service that had earned her excellent reviews from countless customers. Marcus looked up from his phone, and the expression that crossed his face made several nearby diners uncomfortable. His eyes narrowed as he took in Keisha's appearance. Her neatly pressed uniform, her hair pulled back professionally, her genuine smile that was about to fade very quickly. "Are you kidding me right now?" The words came out like venom. The entire restaurant froze. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. This is the Grand Metropolitan, not some street corner diner. I'm about to close the biggest deal of my career tonight, and they send me this? The silence was deafening. Other patrons started turning in their chairs. The sommelier froze mid-pour at a nearby table. Even the jazz seemed to quiet down, as if the universe itself was preparing for the storm about to break. Keisha's training kicked in, her voice steady despite the shock. "Sir, I apologize if there's been any confusion. I'm happy to get the manager if you'd prefer." "Confused?" Marcus's laugh was cold, calculated, designed to humiliate. "The only confusion here is how someone like you ended up serving people like me. What's next? Are they going to have the janitor taking dinner orders? The racism wasn't subtle. It wasn't coded. It was venomous, naked, and impossible to ignore. Several diners gasped audibly. An elderly woman at the next table covered her mouth in shock. A young couple near the window started whispering urgently, the woman pulling out her phone. But Keisha stood there, absorbing every word with a dignity that should have shamed Marcus into silence. Instead, he kept going. "Look, sweetheart," the condescension dripped from his voice like poison. "I don't know what charity case program hired you, but I need actual service from someone who understands the caliber of clientele that frequents this establishment. Someone who doesn't look like they just walked off the street." That's when something extraordinary happened. A man at the bar slowly turned around. Tall, impeccably dressed, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen too much of the world's cruelty. He'd been quietly nursing a single malt whiskey, reviewing documents on his tablet, minding his own business. Until now. Dr. James Morrison III didn't just look important. He radiated the kind of quiet authority that comes from decades of building empires and destroying obstacles. At 58, he was one of the most powerful venture capitalists on the East Coast, with a portfolio worth $47 billion and a reputation for making or breaking careers with a single phone call. And he'd heard every single word. "Excuse me." Dr. Morrison's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and commanding. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." Marcus barely glanced over, still focused on intimidating Keisha. "This doesn't concern you, friend. I'm just trying to get proper service here." "Oh, but it does concern me." Dr. Morrison glided over, his presence electrifying the entire atmosphere of the restaurant. "You see, Mr. Wellington, yes, I know exactly who you are. You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Now Marcus looked up, recognition dawning in his eyes. In their circles, everyone knew Doctor. Morrison's face, his reputation, his power to make billion-dollar dreams come true or turn them into nightmares. "Dr. Morrison, I had no idea you were that young woman you just humiliated," Dr. Morrison continued, his voice getting quieter and more dangerous with each word. "Her name is Keisha Williams. She's a third-year law student at Columbia, specializing in civil rights law. She volunteers at legal aid clinics on weekends, mentors underprivileged kids, and maintains a 3.9 GPA while working nights to pay for her education." The color vanished from Marcus's face like someone had pulled a plug. "But here's what you don't know, Mr. Wellington. Here's the part that's about to change your life forever." Dr. Morrison leaned in closer, his voice now barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of an avalanche. "Keisha is my daughter." The entire restaurant died. Not a breath, not a whisper, nothing. You could have heard a heartbeat in Times Square. Marcus's mouth fell open. Other diners leaned forward, sensing they were witnessing something historic. Keisha's eyes widened as she looked at the man she'd never seen before, confusion and hope warring on her face. "That's right, Doctor," Morrison continued, his voice gaining strength like a gathering storm. 24 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was young, stupid, and scared. I abandoned the woman I loved and the daughter we created because I thought my family's money and reputation were more important than love and responsibility. Marcus was now visibly shaking. "I've spent every day since then trying to find Keisha, to make amends, to be the father I should have been from the beginning. I've hired private investigators, donated millions to scholarships in her name, supported every cause she cares about. All from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to earn the right to be in her life. Dr. Morrison turned to Keisha, his eyes filled with tears he'd held back for decades. And now, watching you handle this situation with more grace and dignity than this man will ever possess, I realize that moment is now. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Keisha, but I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to earn it. But the story doesn't end there, not even close. Dr. Morrison turned back to Marcus, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You see, Mr. Wellington, that $3.5 billion deal you mentioned, the one you're here to close tonight, that would be with Morrison Capital Ventures, my company. The deal that was going to save your failing empire and make you the richest man in tech. Marcus's face went from pale to green. He looked like he was about to vomit right there on the white linen tablecloth. Was going to save your empire, Doctor. Morrison repeated slowly, letting each word sink in. Past tense. Because any man who would treat my daughter, or any human being, with such disgusting contempt doesn't deserve to share the same oxygen as decent people, let alone receive $3.5 billion of my money. The restaurant erupted in whispers and gasps. Dr. Morrison, I'm begging you, let me explain. Marcus scrambled to his feet, desperation replacing arrogance in his voice. Explain what? That you're not actually a racist? That this was all some kind of misunderstanding? Dr. Morrison's laugh was sharp as broken glass. I heard every word, Mr. Wellington. So did everyone else in this restaurant. So did that young woman recording everything on her phone over there, and that gentleman live streaming to his social media followers. Marcus spun around, finally noticing the phones pointed in his direction. The shocked faces of other diners. The staff members who had gathered to witness what might be the most expensive public meltdown in Manhattan history. No, this can't be happening. Oh, but it is happening, Doctor, Morrison said with deadly calm. Right now, my legal team is drafting termination papers for our deal. By morning, every venture capital firm, every bank, every potential investor in the city will know exactly what kind of man you really are. Your company's stock is going to crater. Your board of directors is going to demand your resignation. Your reputation, the only thing that matters in our business, is about to be worth less than the paper this contract is printed on. Dr. Morrison pulled out his phone and, without breaking eye contact with Marcus, made a call that would change everything. Jennifer? It's James. Cancel the Wellington deal. All of it. Every penny. And make sure word gets out about why. He paused, listening. No, I don't care about the legal complications. Some things are more important than money. The dominoes were already starting to fall. Within minutes, Marcus's own phone started buzzing incessantly. Text messages, calls, emails. His entire world beginning to collapse in real time. His assistant, his lawyers, his board members, all trying to understand what had just happened to the deal that was supposed to secure Wellington Industries' future. But Dr. Morrison wasn't finished. He turned to address the entire restaurant, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the dining room. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to witness something important tonight. This is what happens when privilege meets consequences, when arrogance meets accountability, when a man thinks his bank account makes him better than another human being. The crowd was hanging on every word. For too long, people like Mr. Wellington have hidden behind their money, their power, their connections, thinking they can treat others however they want without facing any real consequences. Well, tonight that changes. Tonight, hate has a price tag, and it's $3.5 billion. The applause started slowly, from one table in the back, then spread throughout the restaurant like wildfire. People stood up, clapping not just for the justice being served, but for something bigger. The idea that maybe, just maybe, actions still have consequences in this world. Marcus stood there, watching his empire crumble around him, realizing that in one moment of blind prejudice, he'd lost everything he'd worked his entire life to build. But this story is just getting started, and what happens next will shock you even more. The silence that followed Dr. Morrison's declaration was the kind that rewrites history. Keisha stood statue still, her notepad forgotten like yesterday's news in her trembling hands, staring at this stranger who claimed to be her father. 24 years of questions, of wondering, of creating imaginary scenarios about why she'd grown up without a dad. And here he was, standing in the wreckage of a racist billionaire's life. Marcus, meanwhile, looked like a man watching his own empire burn in slow motion. His phone screamed with notifications, and with each buzz, another piece of his empire crumbled to dust. The Wellington Industries stock ticker on his Apple Watch showed red numbers that kept getting deeper, like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. "This can't be real," Marcus whispered, but his voice carried in the absolute stillness of the restaurant. You can't destroy a man's entire life over one conversation. Dr. Morrison's laugh was colder than a Manhattan winter. One conversation? Mr. Wellington, this wasn't a conversation. This was a character revelation. This was you showing everyone in this room exactly who you really are when you think nobody important is watching. He pulled out his tablet, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Would you like to see how the market is responding to news of our deal's cancellation? Your stock price has dropped 18% in the last 12 minutes. Your company's bonds are in free fall. 3 major investors just pulled out of your upcoming IPO expansion. The color drained completely from Marcus's face as he watched his life's work disintegrating in real time. How is this even possible? How could word spread this fast? That's when Sarah Chen, a young woman at the corner table, spoke up. Because I've been broadcasting this entire encounter live to my 2.3 million TikTok followers. And they're absolutely losing their minds. She held up her phone, showing the live viewer count climbing rapidly past 400,000. And they're not exactly fans of racism. Marcus spun around, finally noticing all the phones pointed in his direction. The elderly woman who'd gasped earlier was recording with steady hands. The young couple by the window had their devices out, capturing every moment. Even some of the restaurant staff were discreetly filming from behind the kitchen doors. Welcome to the digital age, Mr. Wellington, Dr. Morrison said with grim satisfaction, where accountability travels faster than your lies, and consequences arrive before you finish making your excuses. But all of this chaos, all of this public destruction, faded into background noise when Dr. Morrison turned to face his daughter. Keisha, he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer he'd been waiting 24 years to say. I know this is overwhelming. I know you have every right to walk away, to tell me I lost my chance decades ago. But please, just give me 5 minutes to explain. Keisha looked at this man, her father, taking in details that suddenly made sense. The shape of his eyes, the same as hers. The way he carried himself. The confidence she'd always wished she inherited. The intensity in his expression when he fought for what was right. Something she'd felt burning in her own chest her entire life. 24 years, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow cutting through all the noise. 24 years I tortured myself wondering if my father was dead, imprisoned, or simply didn't love me enough to find me. The pain in her voice was unbearable to witness. I used to create fairy tales about you, she continued, tears beginning to flow freely now. I told myself you were a soldier fighting for freedom, or a doctor saving the world, or maybe you just didn't know I existed. Anything except the truth I was most afraid of, that you knew about me and chose not to be here. Dr. Morrison's composure cracked completely. Keisha, I chose wrong. I chose fear over love, reputation over responsibility. I was 22 years old and terrified of what my family would say, what society would think, what it would mean for my future. I convinced myself I was protecting you and your mother by staying away. Protecting us? The anger in Keisha's voice made several diners step back. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up invisible to the one man who should have protected you? Do you know how many times Mom worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table? How many nights I went to bed wondering what was wrong with me that made my own father not want to be in my life? The restaurant had become a theater of raw human emotion. Marcus tried to speak up, to somehow redirect attention away from the family drama unfolding. Look, I think we're all getting a bit carried away here. Shut up! 3 voices said simultaneously. Doctor, Morrison, Keisha, and a man at the bar who'd been quietly watching everything unfold. The force of their collective rage was enough to make Marcus physically recoil. Dr. Morrison took a step closer to his daughter, his hands shaking as he reached into his jacket pocket. Keisha, I know words mean nothing after this long. I know I can't undo 24 years of absence with apologies. But I want you to know that not a single day has passed that I haven't thought about you. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and opened it to reveal something that made Keisha gasp. Dozens of photographs, stolen moments from elementary school graduations, high school achievements, college acceptance letters. Images that could only have been taken by someone who'd been watching from afar, caring from a distance. How did you get these? I hired private investigators when you turned 18, Doctor. Morrison admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Not to interfere, not to disrupt your life, but just to know you were okay. To see the incredible woman you were becoming despite my absence. Every scholarship you won, every academic achievement, every moment of success, I was there in the shadows, prouder than I had any right to be. Keisha stared at the photos, her hands trembling as she recognized moments from her own life captured by a stranger she was now learning was her father. You were at my high school graduation. Back row, left side, behind the tall man in the blue suit. Dr. Morrison's smile was sad and proud simultaneously. You gave the valedictorian speech about social justice and changing the world. I wept like a broken man. You were at my college acceptance celebration, outside Mama Rosa's pizza place. You and your friends were laughing so loud I could hear you from across the street. Your mother was there too. She looked so proud, so happy. I almost approached you both that night. Why didn't you? Dr. Morrison looked down at his hands, the weight of decades of regret visible in every line of his face. Because I was a coward. Because I'd convinced myself that you were better off without me, that introducing myself would only complicate your life. Because every year that passed made it harder to explain why I'd waited so long. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's increasingly frantic phone calls. His voice carried across the restaurant as he tried to do damage control with his board of directors. No, listen to me. This is all a misunderstanding. What do you mean the shareholders are calling for my resignation? I don't care what's trending on Twitter. How much is our stock down now? The answer to that last question came from Sarah Chen, still live streaming to her growing audience. Wellington Industries is down 37% and falling, she announced to her viewers. The hashtag #racist CEO is trending #1 worldwide, and someone just started a change.org petition demanding his removal that's already got over 200,000 signatures. Marcus ended his call and turned back to Doctor Morrison with desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. Dr. Morrison, please, you have to understand. I'm not usually like this. The stress, the pressure, the deal falling through with Yamamoto Industries last month, I haven't been myself. Now you're lying on top of being racist. The voice came from the restaurant's manager, Robert Sterling, who'd been quietly observing from the hostess stand. He stepped forward with the confident stride of a man who'd just made a life-changing decision. Mr. Wellington, you've been dining here for 3 years. This isn't the first time you've made inappropriate comments about our staff. We've overlooked your behavior because of your status, your tips, your connections, but not anymore. He gestured to Keisha with genuine respect. This young woman has been nothing but exemplary. Professional, courteous, and absolutely exceptional at her job since the day she started here. She's helped train new servers, stayed late when we were short-staffed, and treated every customer with dignity, regardless of how they treated her. Robert's voice grew stronger, more confident. You, on the other hand, have been a problem since day one. Snapping at servers, making inappropriate comments, acting like your money gives you the right to treat human beings like garbage. Well, your money doesn't spend here anymore. You're banned from the Grand Metropolitan, effective immediately. The applause that erupted was thunderous. Every diner, every staff member, even some people who'd gathered outside after hearing about the confrontation on social media. They all clapped with the enthusiasm of people witnessing justice served in real time. Marcus stood there, watching his world collapse from every possible angle. His business was dying, his reputation was destroyed, and now he couldn't even get a decent meal in the city he'd once dominated. But the real story was just beginning to unfold between Dr. Morrison and Keisha. I have 1,000 questions burning inside me, Keisha said, wiping tears from her eyes, but standing taller than she had all evening. Why now? Why here? How did you even know I worked here? I've known where you worked for months, Doctor, Morrison admitted. I've been trying to work up the courage to approach you, to figure out the right way to reintroduce myself into your life. I've written letters I never sent, practiced conversations I never had, hoped for moments that never came. And then this racist idiot created the perfect moment. I was here tonight having dinner before flying to London tomorrow. I saw him being escorted to his table, and I recognized him immediately. Marcus Wellington, the CEO, who was supposed to sign our partnership agreement tomorrow morning. I was actually planning to finalize the deal via video call from the plane. Dr. Morrison shook his head in amazement. But then I watched him treat you like you were invisible, like you were somehow less human than he was, and something inside me snapped. Not just because you're my daughter, though that certainly intensified my rage, but because no one deserves to be treated that way. So you destroyed his entire career to defend me? I destroyed his career because he showed me who he really is, and I don't do business with people who think money makes them superior to other human beings. Dr. Morrison's voice was firm, unwavering. The fact that you're my daughter just made his behavior unforgivable instead of merely disgusting. Marcus tried one last desperate play. Keisha, right? Listen, I'm sorry if I offended you. Sometimes in high-pressure situations, successful people like myself say things we don't mean. How about this? I'll give you $10,000 cash right now as an apology, and we can all just forget this whole thing happened. The offer hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The entire restaurant waited to see how Keisha would respond to this final insult, disguised as generosity. Keisha looked at Marcus for a long moment. then at the envelope of cash he was holding out, then back at his face. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd just discovered her own power. Mr. Wellington, let me explain something to you about the difference between wealth and worth. You see this uniform I'm wearing? It represents honest work, dignity, and the sacrifice I make every night to build a better future for myself and my community. Your money? It represents everything that's wrong with this country. The belief that bank account balances matter more than basic human decency. She stepped closer, and Marcus actually backed away. You think you can buy your way out of showing the world who you really are? You think $10,000 erases the fact that you just revealed yourself to be a small, hateful, pathetic excuse for a human being? The crowd was riveted. Keep your money, Mr. Wellington. Use it to buy yourself some therapy, some books about civil rights, maybe a course on basic human empathy. Because right now, you're the poorest man in this room, and no amount of cash can fix that kind of bankruptcy. The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, the applause began again. Not the explosive clapping from before, but the kind of sustained, respectful applause reserved for moments when someone speaks truth to power with such devastating eloquence that words become weapons of justice. Marcus stood there, holding his rejected money, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd lost everything that mattered and had no idea how to begin getting it back. And the night was far from over. Dr. Morrison turned back to his daughter, pride shining in his eyes like stars. Keisha, I've spent 24 years wondering what kind of woman you'd become. Now I know, and I've never been prouder of anyone in my entire life. What happened next would ignite the internet and become the defining moment of the entire evening. Dr. Morrison reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, time-weathered velvet box. Keisha's breath caught in her throat as she recognized it. Not the box itself, but what it represented. Your mother gave this back to me the day I told her I couldn't be the man you both deserved. Doctor. Morrison said, his voice thick with emotion. It was supposed to be her engagement ring. Instead, it became my daily torture, a reminder of the biggest mistake I've ever made. He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring, and several people in the restaurant leaned forward to see. I've carried this with me every day for 24 years, hoping that someday I'd have the chance to make things right. Not with your mother, that ship sailed long ago, but with you. Keisha stared at the ring, memories flooding back. Mom used to tell me fairy tales about a ring, she whispered. She said my father gave it to her when they were young, before I was born. She never told me what happened to it. She never cashed it in, never sold it, even when we were eating cereal for dinner and counting pennies for milk, Doctor. Morrison continued. She said it belonged to our daughter's future, not her past. She was right, as usual. He closed the box and held it out to Keisha. This isn't an engagement ring anymore. It's a promise ring. A promise that I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to be the father you deserved from the beginning. The emotional weight of the moment was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Marcus Wellington's world continued to collapse in spectacular fashion. His phone rang constantly. Reporters, board members, investors, all demanding explanations for the viral videos showing him at his absolute worst. He tried to answer one call, hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. Marcus, what the hell is happening? The voice belonged to Richard Harrison, chairman of Wellington Industries Board of Directors. Our stock is in complete free fall. It's like watching financial suicide, and I've got shareholders calling for an emergency meeting. Richard, I can explain everything. Explain what? How you destroyed a $3.5 billion deal by calling a black woman stupid? How you revealed yourself to be exactly the kind of person our PR team has been working overtime to convince people you're not. Marcus looked around desperately, realizing his entire life was being discussed publicly. Every conversation, every phone call, every desperate attempt to control the narrative was happening in front of an audience that had no sympathy for his plight. The live streams continued, the recordings multiplied, and somewhere in Silicon Valley, a social media algorithm was ensuring that Marcus Wellington's racism would be seen by millions. The board is meeting tonight, Richard continued, his voice cold as ice. Be prepared to tender your resignation by morning, or we'll throw you out like yesterday's garbage. Marcus ended the call and slumped into his chair, watching Dr. Morrison and Keisha navigate their emotional reunion. He'd lost everything, his company, his reputation, his future. And for what? A moment of pure, unfiltered hatred that revealed who he really was beneath the expensive suits and corporate polish. But Keisha and Dr. Morrison were building something beautiful from the wreckage. I want to know everything, Keisha said, accepting the velvet box with trembling hands. About you, about Mom, about why you stayed away. But I also want you to know something about me. She straightened up, and Doctor. Morrison could see the lawyer she was becoming in her posture, her tone, her unwavering eye contact. I'm not the same person I would have been if you'd been there from the beginning. Your absence forged me in fire, made me unbreakable, more independent, more determined to fight for people who don't have powerful fathers to protect them. Dr. Morrison nodded, understanding the complexity of what she was saying. I've spent my entire life proving that I didn't need you, that I could succeed on my own merit, that your absence wouldn't define my future. And you know what? I was right. I am successful. I am strong. I am exactly who I'm supposed to be. She paused, letting her words sink in. But that doesn't mean I don't want you in my life now. It just means you need to understand that you're not coming back to save me. You're coming back to know me. The wisdom in her words, the maturity of her perspective, left Dr. Morrison speechless for a moment. This wasn't a fairy tale reunion where the absent father returned to rescue his daughter. This was a real conversation between two adults, one of whom had survived and thrived despite abandonment. I understand, he said finally, and I'm grateful for the chance to know the incredible woman you've become, not despite my absence, but because of your own strength. That's when Sarah Chen interrupted with an update that changed everything. Guys, you need to see this, she called out from her table, still live streaming, but now with over 800,000 viewers. The internet has gone absolutely insane over this story. She turned her phone screen toward the crowd. Someone started a GoFundMe for Keisha's law school expenses. It's already exploded to $150,000 in the last hour, money pouring in like rain. Number 2 worldwide, right behind #RacistCEO. The restaurant erupted in surprised gasps and spontaneous applause. Keisha stared at the phone screen in shock, watching the donation counter climb in real time. But wait, it gets better, Sarah continued with a grin. Columbia Law School just tweeted that they're offering you a full scholarship for your remaining year, plus a guaranteed internship with their civil rights clinic. The crowd went absolutely wild. Even more shocking was what came next. Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification, and her eyes widened as she read it. Oh my God, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund just offered you a summer internship. The Southern Poverty Law Center wants to interview you. And 3 different civil rights law firms have posted job offers specifically for you on LinkedIn. Dr. Morrison watched his daughter process this information, pride and amazement warring on his face. Keisha, in one night, you've gone from working nights to pay for law school to having more opportunities than most graduates dream of. All because I stood up to a racist, Keisha said in wonder. All because I refused to let him make me feel small. Marcus overheard this and tried one final desperate manipulation. See? You should be kissing my feet, he called out, his voice cracking with delusion. If I hadn't said what I said, none of this would have happened. I made you famous. You've actually benefited from our encounter tonight. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes volcanic eruptions. Every person in the restaurant turned to stare at Marcus with such collective disgust that he actually physically recoiled. Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. Mr. Wellington, you just revealed the final layer of your character. Not only are you a racist, you're also delusional enough to think your victim should be grateful for your abuse. That level of disconnect from reality is genuinely disturbing. Robert Sterling, the restaurant manager, approached Marcus with 2 security guards. Sir, we've asked you to leave multiple times. These gentlemen will escort you out now. You can't throw me out. I'm Marcus Wellington. I'm somebody. Do you know who I am? Yeah, said one of the security guards with a slight smile. You're the racist CEO who just flushed $3.5 billion down the toilet. Trust me, buddy. Everyone knows exactly who you are now. As the security guards escorted Marcus toward the exit, he turned back one final time. This isn't over. I'll sue all of you. I'll destroy this restaurant. You'll what? Dr. Morrison's voice stopped Marcus cold. You'll hire lawyers with what money? Your imaginary fortune? Your company is about to fire you. Your assets are tied up in Wellington Industries stock that's now worthless. And your reputation is so toxic that no reputable law firm will touch you. The truth of this statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. He realized that his threats were empty, his power was gone, and his future was as dark as his soul had always been. Get him out of here, doctor, Morrison said dismissively. Some people's time is up. As Marcus was escorted into the Manhattan night, father and daughter sat down together for the first time in 24 years. So, Keisha said, a small smile playing at her lips, I guess we have an entire lifetime to catch up on. We have forever to talk about, doctor. Morrison replied, signaling the waiter. But right now, I want to hear about every single moment I missed. Your dreams, your plans, your favorite foods, your biggest fears, your proudest moments. I want to know my daughter. 3 hours later, the Grand Metropolitan had metamorphosed from an upscale restaurant into the epicenter of a revolution. Word had ignited throughout Manhattan about the confrontation, spreading like wildfire through concrete canyons, and people kept arriving, some hoping to catch a glimpse of the viral moment's aftermath, others wanting to support Keisha and the restaurant that had stood up for what was right. Dr. Morrison and Keisha sat in the corner booth that had started it all, surrounded by empty plates and full hearts. The initial awkwardness had melted away, revealing something absolutely magical. 2 people discovering that blood truly was thicker than time, that love could survive any storm, that some bonds were simply unbreakable. Tell me about Mom, Doctor, Morrison said, his voice soft with old pain and new hope. How is she? Is she happy? Keisha smiled, and in that expression, he could see traces of the woman he'd loved and lost so many years ago. She's incredible, Dad. The word tasted like coming home, strange on her tongue, but absolutely right. She's a nurse now, works at Mount Sinai. She never remarried, said she was too busy raising a daughter and building a career to worry about men. She sounds exactly like the woman I fell in love with. She is. But she's stronger now, more confident. Your leaving shattered her, but it also taught her that she could handle anything life threw at her. It turned her into a warrior. She raised me to be independent, to never rely on anyone else for my happiness or my success. Dr. Morrison nodded, pride and regret warring on his face. I want to make this right with her too, if she'll let me. Not romantically, I understand that ship sailed long ago, but I owe her an apology that's 24 years overdue. She'll appreciate that, Keisha said, but don't expect forgiveness right away. Mom's protective of me, and she's going to want to make sure you're here for the right reasons. Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah Chen, who approached their table with her phone still recording. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but my followers are begging to donate directly to you. They want to make sure every single penny reaches you. The fund is up to $300,000 now and climbing like a rocket. Keisha looked overwhelmed. I can't believe this is real. This morning I was worried about paying next month's rent, and now you're financially free to focus on your studies and your future career in civil rights law, Doctor. Morrison finished. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. But the real surprise came when Robert Sterling approached with a serious expression. Keisha, I need to tell you something. We've been getting calls all evening from reporters, talk show producers, and publishers. Everyone wants to interview you, to hear your story in your own words. He handed her a business card. This gentleman called personally. He's a literary agent from New York's biggest agency. He thinks your story could become a book, maybe even a movie. Dr. Morrison examined the card and whistled low. Keisha, this agent represents some of the biggest names in publishing. If he's interested in your story, it means you could have a platform to speak about racism, justice, and social change to millions of people. This is insane, Keisha laughed, shaking her head in amazement. 6 hours ago, I was just trying to get through another shift without dealing with difficult customers. Now people are talking about book deals and movie rights. That's because what happened here tonight was bigger than just one racist getting his comeuppance, Doctor. Morrison explained. You showed grace under pressure, dignity in the face of hatred, and strength when confronted with ugliness. That's inspiring to people. Sarah looked up from her phone with excitement. The story just went international. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, they're all covering this. And the hashtag Keisha Williams is now trending in 12 countries. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Wellington was discovering what rock bottom actually felt like. His penthouse apartment, the one with the billion-dollar view of Central Park, the one that made people weep with envy, was no longer his. Wellington Industries board had moved faster than anyone expected, voting unanimously to terminate his employment and freeze his assets pending a full investigation into corporate misconduct. The news was already hitting the financial channels. Wellington Industries stock continues historic collapse. After CEO's racist tirade goes viral, read the Chiron on CNBC. Marcus sat in a cockroach-infested budget hotel near LaGuardia Airport, staring at the ruins of his empire, watching his life's work being dissected by financial analysts and social commentators. His phone had died hours ago. The battery drained by constant calls from reporters he refused to answer. But the real devastation was still coming. A knock at his hotel room door revealed a process server with a stack of legal documents thick as a phone book. Wrongful termination lawsuit from Wellington Industries Board. Defamation suit from Dr. Morrison's legal team. Civil rights violation complaint filed by 3 different advocacy groups. Mr. Wellington, you've been served. As the process server left, Marcus realized that his racist outburst hadn't just cost him money, it had made him legally vulnerable in ways he never imagined. The video evidence was ironclad, witnessed by dozens of people, and his own words would haunt him in courtrooms for years to come. His racism preserved in digital amber. Back at the Grand Metropolitan, the celebration was reaching its peak. The restaurant had become an impromptu gathering place for everyone who'd been inspired by Keisha's story. Civil rights activists, local politicians, students from Columbia Law School, even some celebrities who'd heard about the viral confrontation, they all came to show support and witness history being made. Dr. Morrison watched his daughter navigate the attention with remarkable grace, answering questions thoughtfully, posing for pictures graciously, and never losing sight of the bigger message about dignity and justice. "She's going to change the world," he murmured to Robert Sterling, who'd become an unofficial host for the evening's festivities. "She already has," Robert replied. "Look around." When's the last time you saw this many people united around something positive? When's the last time justice felt this immediate, this satisfying? A local news crew arrived, and the reporter approached Keisha for an on-camera interview. "Miss Williams, you've become a symbol of grace under pressure tonight. What would you say to young people who might face similar situations?" Keisha thought carefully before answering, aware that her words would reach far beyond this restaurant, this city, this moment. "I'd say that your dignity is not dependent on how other people treat you. It's an unbreakable core within you. It's dependent on how you choose to respond. When someone tries to make you feel small because of your race, your gender, your economic status, or anything else about you, that's when your character is truly tested." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Don't let their hatred infect your soul or corrode your spirit. Don't let their ignorance make you bitter. Stand tall, speak truth, and remember that their words say everything about them and nothing about you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the universe will deliver justice on a silver platter." The reporter nodded, clearly moved by her response. "What's next for you, Keisha? How has this night changed your future?" "Honestly, I'm still processing everything, but I know that whatever opportunities come from this, I want to use them to help other people who face discrimination. I want to be the lawyer who stands up for people who can't stand up for themselves." Dr. Morrison's pride was visible to everyone watching. As the news crew finished their interview, father and daughter found themselves alone again in the corner booth where everything had started. "I have a confession to make, Doctor," Morrison said with a slight smile. "That $3.5 billion deal I canceled, it was actually going to be financial suicide for my company in the long run. Marcus's technology was outdated, his business model was unsustainable, and his leadership team was incompetent." Keisha raised an eyebrow. "So you didn't just destroy his deal to defend me?" "Oh, I absolutely destroyed it to defend you. But it also happened to be the best business decision I've made all year. Sometimes doing the right thing and doing the smart thing align perfectly, like stars in perfect constellation." They both laughed, and something healed between them in that moment. "Dad," Keisha said, testing the word again, "I want you to know something. I forgive you for leaving. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger would poison my future, just like it poisoned my past. And because I can see that you've spent 24 years punishing yourself more than I ever could." Dr. Morrison's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more to me than all the money in the world. But," Keisha continued with a slight smile, "you're going to have to earn your way back into my life. Being my biological father is just an accident of DNA. Being my dad, That's going to take blood, sweat, and tears, proving that you're here to stay. I wouldn't expect anything less, he replied, and I have all the time in the world. As the evening wound down, the last updates about Marcus Wellington's fate began trickling in. Wellington Industries stock had finished the day down 67%. The company's board had announced a complete leadership overhaul and a corporate rebranding effort. Marcus himself had been blacklisted from every exclusive club, restaurant, and hotel that mattered. A pariah in his own kingdom. But perhaps most poignantly, the college scholarship fund he'd established years earlier, probably as a tax write-off, had voted to rename itself the Keisha Williams Scholarship for Social Justice and redirect all future funds towards supporting minority students pursuing civil rights law. Even in his destruction, Marcus had inadvertently created something beautiful. You know what's crazy? Keisha said as she and Dr. Morrison prepared to leave the restaurant. If Marcus hadn't been such a racist tonight, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have found each other, I wouldn't have these opportunities, and he'd still be a billionaire. That's the thing about hatred, Doctor, Morrison replied thoughtfully. It always destroys the person who carries it more than anyone else. Marcus's racism didn't just reveal his character, it became his downfall. As they walked out of the Grand Metropolitan together, father and daughter side by side for the first time in over 2 decades, Keisha looked back at the restaurant that had changed her life. Thank you, she whispered to the building, to the moment, to the strange forces that had brought justice and family together in one extraordinary night. 6 months later, Keisha Williams would graduate summa cum laude from Columbia Law School. Her book, Grace Under Fire: A Daughter's Journey to Justice, would become a bestseller. Dr. Morrison would walk her down the aisle at her law school graduation, and Marcus Wellington would be working as a lonely night security guard in Newark, watching empty buildings instead of building empires. His empire reduced to minimum wage and maximum humility. But that night at the Grand Metropolitan, none of that mattered. What mattered was that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe delivers justice with surgical precision exactly when it's needed most. What mattered was that love can survive decades. Separation means nothing. Hearts remember. What mattered was that standing up to hatred, even when it's scary, can change everything. And what mattered most? Keisha Williams had discovered something infinitely more precious than any fortune. She had found her voice, her power, and her father, all in one perfect, terrible, absolutely transformative night. Justice served, family restored, love triumphant,